Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Point Sports. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Aaron St Denis. You can find me on Twitter at FFMadScientist. I will be your Cleveland Browns correspondent, and I've got my buddy here, Jesse. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jesse Moeller. You can find me at right down below, jmoeller05, and I am the Seattle Seahawks High Point correspondent.
We got a little bit lucky here for our first video. We noticed that our two teams played each other this week, so we thought we would kick things off and make our first official High Points video and make it a Week 8 recap here of Seattle versus Cleveland. So we'll bring up the fantasy scoring here. This is the half PPR scoring of the top 10. Pretty much everyone who scored a fantasy point in the positives made this list. There was a second string tight end who put up 0.2, but we ignored him. So, Jesse, what do you think of your team here?
It was interesting for the running backs in particular. And this, like, Walker kind of had an injury going into the game, so that might have something to do with it. But they leaned on Charbonnet towards the end. And I know if you were following the game on Twitter, you would saw that where everybody's like, what's going on with Kenneth Walker? And I'm like, I don't know. But they talked about he had a little bit of injury, so I think there's that. It's just the Seahawks offense was really good at the beginning of the game and really good at the end of the game. The in-between was pretty much a disaster. So it was, I think that's just credit to the Browns defense and how good they are. But yeah, it was an odd game for fantasy. As you can kind of see, it's kind of just all over the map besides Tyler Lockett, who was, vintage Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, it was interesting for me. I have Kenneth Walker in quite a few leagues. And I looked in, and I swear every time I turned on a highlight, I looked and said, oh, no, another great-looking Zach Charbonnet carry. And then when I looked, he didn't have that many carries, so I must have just hit the 4 or 5 carries he did have. But they both look pretty good. The wide receivers, there was quite a bit of production here. I'm amazed that you got high-end production out of Lockett, and then you still got something useful there out of DK, JSN, Bobo. Like, you've got some solid receiving assets here. I know you've been promoting Jake Bobo, it seems like, for the last 6 weeks. So I own quite a bit of Jake Bobo, and I had a few guys in my league say, wow, how did you know about him? I said, I just knew. Had nothing to do with my buddy and co-host telling me Jake Bobo all the time. I had inside sources. So what do you think about Gino? He's I guess that 10th year breakout couldn't be trusted after all. He's not looking nearly as good this year. He's still fantasy relevant, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so like Bobo's interesting. I'll hit on that for a second. Bobo's just a very good blocking wide receiver, so he's going to be on the field a lot because he's one of the – I think PFF has him as one of the highest run blockers in the league because he's a giant wide receiver who's not fast, but he's really good at that. And then they get him at the end zone, and that's how he scores fantasy points. So, like, he's a red zone magnet, so, like, you'll see him catch touchdowns. He's basically like a tight end down there. But, yeah, Gino it's been up and down with him. And this might have a little bit to do with the play calling and them trying to figure out what to do with Jackson Smith and Jigba, but it's in kind of just it hasn't hit yet. We're kind of hitting on the peripherals, just not there. Where like last year it was like, oh my gosh, but we're close. It's just we just need a little bit to get over that hump. And like talking about your guys, I think like I'm a big Jerome Ford, like he's my favorite running back on that team. And it was weird seeing them being like, oh yeah, high ankle sprain. No, he's gonna play. So I was like watching that game and I was like, what is happening? Is this guy Superman? Because he played through and got like all the rushes at the end of the game. I just found that fascinating.
What do you make of the wide receiver situation here? Going into the second half, like what are you doing here? Are you buying low on JSN and Bobo? You trying to sell high on Lockett and Metcalf? Or you just holding – how do you think the 4 of them shake out here for the second half?
I think it's going to be convergence where like Jackson Smith is going to get his – they're slowly integrating his ADOT. And this hits more with the line and the line issues they've had. They finally have both their tackles are finally healthy after just a disastrous first half of the year. And they're starting to get their guard play working right. So like now that their line is coming together and it's kind of the line we saw at the beginning of the season, they're allowing JSN to kind of just, play further down the field, not doing these little check down screens. So I'm a little bit worried about DK from fantasy perspective, but like overall, yeah, like JSN's the cheapest, and he's probably going to finish, closer to those two than where they started out. So like, I just take him as the cheapest one, but I like all of these guys for kind of hit or miss.
You worried about Walker? You think Charbonnet starts to turn this into a timeshare? Or you think it was just that Walker was hampered by injury?
I think that's a lot of it. And Charbonnet hasn't done much of anything this year. It's been the Kenneth Walker show. So I think more Pete Carroll just wanted to see what Zach Charbonnet has and that he's in fact a good running back too. So they just let him kind of, get some work and get his feet wet and, show there's obviously that one highlight from a couple of weeks ago where he trucked a guy in the end zone. You're like, whoa, hey, hello there. But yeah, this was like the first game where they like leaned on him, and you're like, this guy looks pretty good too. So I think he's going to play somewhat of a role, but like I just think they trust Walker too much to fully go away from him.
All right, I guess we can head on over to my side here. We had PJ Walker put up a middling fantasy day. Didn't look great, XFL quarterback, it is what it is. He's certainly not Kurt Warner coming over from the Arena Football League. I only have that in my mind because I, for some reason, decided to watch that earlier while I was working. Have you seen that Amazon Prime special? It wasn't half bad, but
yeah, that's pretty. I enjoyed it myself. Yeah,
like I said, then the running back room here is kind of a mess. Jerome Ford, I was never high on him. He always seemed like just kind of a plodder to me. Obviously, he was hampered by the injury, so the fact that he even played is surprising. I don't know what to make of this running back room. Kareem Hunt, does he have anything left in the tank? Pierre Strong, I thought was fast and explosive, and I had high hopes for him in New England. I'd love to see him get a role here. Signing Hunt kind of ruins that for me. I would have rather seen Ford and Strong take this here and have a 1-2 punch. I kind of think they're, they have different roles here. I think Strong is more suited to the outside explosive runs, whereas Ford's kind of the up the middle thumper. I don't know. What do you think of these guys here?
I'm curious because like I was surprised at how thin Pierre Strong looks, like particularly next to Kareem Hunt, he's a big boy, right?
Yeah,
you see Pierre Strong, you're like, that dude is he's skinny. So I was like, oh yeah, he's not gonna get any of that inside work of the goal line stuff. So I'm curious to see how it shakes out. But like they have 3 guys that they can count on, which is you ask any NFL team, like that's a good thing, right? So I mean, I've been preaching about Jerome Ford for a while, but I think all of these guys, like you're saying, hit on a different skill set. I'm curious more how you would expect this like backfield to shake out like moving forward.
It scares me. I think the one I'm acquiring least is Ford because he seems to have the highest cost right now. I'm not sure this is anything more than a committee. I'll take my shots at Kareem Hunt on the bench. I think a lot of them are RB2 flex worthy players. Even Strong, even lower than that. I can't say like I think I'd easily take Walker over any of these 3 here.
Sorry about
Hello.
that.
If it's a Hunt, I'd like him the most as the one, the standalone here, but I think it's more split up. I guess what we're looking at now looks like Deshaun Watson is looking good in practice, and he projects to play. I think if I'm reading this right.
As far as I've heard, I'm not 100% sure on that, but like that whole thing, yeah, I'm curious. Like, can you hit on that the quarterback room because that just seems like nobody knows what's going on.
Well, so I mean, I get it. Watson hasn't looked good in a year and a half. He missed a lot of time. He's dealt with a lot of injury. He is still significantly better than PJ Walker. I think at this point he's probably just a low end QB1, but I'm kind of curious to see what he does here for this wide receiver room, which we'll get into. Amari Cooper's probably the most locked and loaded out of the bunch. At least when he's home, not necessarily so when he's on the road. I'm interested to see here what this does for Eli Moore, the Donovan Peoples-Jones trade to Detroit. Actually, we looked up before this. He played 83% of snaps and didn't record a target or a stat. I get it. He's not being used. Maybe they just weren't happy with him. I'd like to know, is this going to open up anything more for Eli Moore? Do Cedric Tillman or David Bell or somebody else get more of a role? Or is this just going to be divvied up by Amari Cooper and David Njoku? My gut tells me, like, I think it's going to benefit Njoku the most, but there's got to be some form of bump for Eli Moore here, unless he's just completely written off, in which case you would think that means Cedric Tillman probably has to get involved a little bit more. I'm not sure whose skill set I think lines up most closely with DPJ, but DPJ was really just the boomer bust home run threat, and I don't really think any of the 3 wide receivers they have particularly fills that role. I personally I love Eli Moore as the slippery, explosive little slot receiver type where he's shifty. I'd love to see Cedric Tillman get a shot at this. I liked him in the pre-draft process, and I think if Deshaun Watson is anything even half of what he used to be, I think Tillman could be a big-bodied player. He wasn't the fastest and he wasn't the biggest in this the rookie wide receiver class, but he was one of the few who had a decent combination of size and speed. It was a kind of a flawed receiver class. Like you see a lot that were either big but slow or fast but small. So he's pretty big, he's pretty fast. So I'd like to see Cedric Tillman get a shot here. What do you think of, just in general, the passing game here?
I think that's a fascinating name to bring up, right? Because that totally opens the door for him because DPJ was their deep threat, and I'm totally on board with that. The weird thing about Elijah Moore and Jackson Smith-Njigba is they kind of were doing the same thing early on in the year. It's a lot of underneath, a lot of check downs, a lot of just around the line of scrimmage stuff. So I found one stat interesting that with PJ Walker, David Njoku seeing a 25% target share. So ever since PJ Walker's been the starting quarterback, he loves himself some Njoku. So as long as he's the quarterback, I'm assuming that's how it's going to work out. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I think you bringing up Tillman makes an excellent point because, he's a third round rookie pick and he's got some talent and he offers something that Cooper and Elijah Moore don't. So that's just a fun little kind of feather to keep in cap.
That's an interesting point because if I'm assuming it's going back to Deshaun Watson for week 9 against the Cardinals. And if that's the case where he's not going to be relying as heavily on Njoku, then unless they're just going to feed Cooper massive volume, one of either Elijah Moore or Cedric Tillman has have some fantasy relevance here. I think Moore is obviously, like I said, the shiftiest and the most electric. He's got that fun skill set there, kind of like a smaller, shiftier version of Debo, where he's half running back, half wide receiver. But like I said, Cedric Tillman is the one in this offense who is the most prototypical wide receiver-ish, and I'd like to really see him get a shot here.
Yeah, I think if this was 20 years ago, he's that ideal prototype wide receiver they build, the Andre Johnsons of the world. That's what he is. So yeah, I think that's a very a great point by you to talk about him because most people don't know him and know anything about him. So I think he's a fun a name to keep your eye on.
I guess we can close it out. We got a few more minutes left. Let's do a one-on-one rest of season comparison. Geno or Deshaun Watson?
I think you know where I'm going with this one. I'm going to take Geno. How about you?
I think I'm going to take Watson. I think Watson's floor is as a low-end QB1, and I think that's probably Geno's ceiling. I would also admit that Geno is far safer here, and I could be dead wrong with Watson. All right, at running back, pick I guess you could just rank the 5 on the board if you want.
Yeah, I'll take Walker, and then I will go Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, Zach Charbonnet, and Pierre Strong is how I would rank those 5. Or is that 6? Yeah, that's 5.
5. I go exactly the same way. I would like to see after this week if that changes, whether or not I flip-flop Hunt and Ford. Right now it's, like you said, Walker, Ford, Hunt, Charbonnet, Strong, but that could change if we have, if we find out that maybe this wasn't just the injury and Ford's usage is going to be more of a committee. As far as we've got 6 receivers here, I guess I'll go first here. I would like to take, this is a tough one. We've got some tough assets here. I think I'm going to go DK, Amari Cooper, Lockett, JSN, Eli Moore, and then I'm going to throw in then I'll go Bobo and then throw in Tillman off the board out of nowhere. But it's pretty close. We've got 3 at the top that are close, and then I think 4 at the bottom who are all bunched together.
Yeah, I think it's really, and I think this depends on how you look at those quarterbacks, right? And that's my daughter who's a big fan of them, I guess. But if you're planning on Watson being the guy we've seen in the past, then I would take Cooper as the first guy. Otherwise, if you're not having faith in him, I'm going to take DK, then Cooper, and then I'm really torn between Lockett and JSN. I think they're really close actually moving forward, and then I'll go Elijah, and then I would take Bobo. It's just riding with those random touchdowns he's going to give you every week.
I think what's the word I'm looking for? The tight end one is pretty easy for us both. I think it's probably pretty easily Njoku. The Seahawks seem to be running tight end by committee. It seems like they have 2 or 3 touchdowns from tight ends every week, and it's never the same tight end. Would you agree that it's pretty easily Njoku there?
100%, yeah. As frustrating as he's been, the Seahawks tight end room is a whole other ballgame. You don't know what you're getting out of them each week.
And then I'm trying to look at the ranks here. For kicker, we have Dustin Hopkins as the 4 on the year, and Myers is 15. So My gut told me Hopkins, and I think that's probably where I'm going to stick. And then DST, I think, I don't know about you, I see Cleveland as one of the probably top 3 defenses. I think it's Dallas, and then maybe them, and then San Francisco, but they're definitely the fantasy defense I want. I'd like to avoid them. They got a couple of tough matchups. I don't really want to play anyone against Cincy, but I think I'd fairly easily take the Browns on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I will say the Seahawks upgrading their D line with the deal for Williams from the Giants helps them out a lot. I still think the Browns defense is better, but I see the Seahawks defense getting better each week now. So they'll probably close the gap on that.
All right, well, that is a wrap for the High Points Week 8 recap featuring the Cleveland Browns, who lost 24-20 to the Seattle Seahawks. Once again, I am Aaron St Denis. Find me on Twitter at FFMadScientist. I'm your Cleveland Browns High Point representative, and Jesse J Moeller at JMoeller05 on the other side. He is representing the Seattle Seahawks. You can catch us on at High Points or at H Point Sports on Twitter, or play_High Point on YouTube. Once again, thank you for joining us for our first video. Take care. We will see you next time.